Hi, I'm Karla Schaefer, Auntie Speeds designer, and I'll be demonstrating tubular peyote. I'm going to go over a list of tools and supplies needed for this. For purposes of this video, I'm going to be using two different colors of 8mm seed bead. I'm going to be using a black and a gray cilium, and I'm also going to be using Firline. I'm going to be using crystal and a number 10 or a number 12 needle, and I'm also going to be using a small magnetic clasp, two 3mm open jump rings, and some tiny or small chain. And for tools, I'm going to be using two pairs of chain nose pliers and a nipper tool. As I said before, for the purposes of the video, I'm using two different contrasting colors here so you can see the stitch. This is the sample I did in a blueberry mix, and I did mixes the very first time when I was learning this stitch and decided that it was much easier doing it in a two color so you can see the stitch. So this is what we're going to do first, is we're going to, just as you do in regular flat peyote, you're going to start off with your base, 2 rows. So I'm going to string on, I'm going to have 8 seed beads, and I'm going to do every other color. And just like in regular flat peyote, I think the first 2 rows are really the hardest anyway to get started. So I'm going to take my 8 seed beads and I'm going to bring it down toward the end of my thread, and you want to leave, I lost one, you want to leave about a 10-inch tail. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring this into a loop and tie it into a square knot. And that again is left over right, right over left. And we've created this little loop right here. The amount of Firline you want to work with is as much as you can work with. The longer the better. I don't really like to tie in on this, and if you do have to tie in a thread, be sure and keep the tail of the thread that you just used out as you work your way back around the work so that you'll know you're coming out the right spot. The first thing I'm going to do is, my knot was here, and I'm just going to run it through, I just ran it through this next bead, and then we're going to be ready to pick up our beads. Just like you do in peyote, we're going to, in regular flat peyote, you're going to skip this bead and we're going to pick up and go through here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a black bead, because this is where the bead is going to fall on top of that one, and I'm going to run it through the third bead actually. So I'm skipping a bead, and just, you know, it's kind of going to hang out to the side a little bit, and then we're going to pick up yet another black bead, run it through this gray, and you're going to have a total of 4 beads because we started off with 8. We're skipping every other bead. And as in regular peyote, it doesn't really take form until you get about 3 to 4 rows. Okay. Now that I've got my 4 strung, there's something here that you need to kind of watch. This is how we step up to the next row. Is once you come out of this gray one, you can see that you're right here by the first bead that we strung on. So I'm going to step up, and I'm just going to run my needle through this bead. And at this point, I'm going to tighten my work and bring all the beads up. And since you're working around, the tail just kind of has to, it gets in the way sometimes until you get several rows going. You may have to readjust. So now you can see where I've got these 4 beads that are sitting on top here. And now you can see where we're just going to slot in the gray. So now I'm going to pick up a gray. I'm going to bring it through this black bead. And again, you're just constantly repositioning your piece until you get enough of it to where you can hang on to it. Now you can kind of see it starting to take on a tube. Okay, and again, I am through this black bead. I've got all 4 of my gray ones on. I'll show you here. You can see that I've got all 4. in here, and I am back where we started. So I'm going to run this is stepping up, so I'm going to run my needle through that gray bead, and I'm going to continue on and pick up my next color, which is black. So all you're doing is just filling in the slots that you've left here in the row of 4. Oops. And as you go further, that step up comes much more natural. See, I'm going through that gray bead and I'm going right up through that black. And again, now I have 4 black beads. So I'm going to pick up my gray and slot in. You just continue this until you are nearly to the finished length. I mean, maybe 1/4 of an inch to the finished length that you desire, because the magnetic clasp that we're using is very small and it's going to fit on the very tips of the tube. And then we're going to make a catch chain to connect the clasp and the bracelet together. Okay, I have a really good length here that almost meets around my wrist, and so now I'm going to take my clasp that is now magnet to my needle. Before I do that, what I want to do is I'm coming out of this lower bead, and just as we would step up in a row, I'm going to go ahead and bring it up through there, and then I'm going to take my clasp, and since it is a magnet, it is going to stick to your needle, so just make sure you get it through the loop. So now that I've got it here, I came out of my bead going this direction. So now I want to go in the opposite direction to this bead on the other side. So I'm going to go through here, and this is just, I'm just going to sew it on to the end of the tube here. And then I'm going to do is I'm going to run back through the whole of the clasp, loop of the clasp, and again I'm going to go through that same gray bead that I already went through, and I'm going to do this several times just until I feel like it's secure, just back and forth. Okay, now that I am ready to tie it off, I'm just going to run my needle back through my work here just to reinforce the top. Just going to run through here a couple of times, and then we're going to tie a couple of half hitch knots, and then you will just need to go around to the other end and stitch the clasp on just as we did here, and then we'll attach the little catch chain. And the jump rings are really tiny, so it's kind of hard to get a hold of, but I've tried it both ways, and you can pick which way is comfortable for you. I found that it was actually easier to put it on after I sewed the clasp on. So I'm going to do a half hitch knot, and again you just catch a thread, make a loop and run your needle through, run it through some beadwork, and I'm going to do that again. So you can do this 2 or 3 times just till you secure your thread. Use your nipper tool and trim. There you go. Okay, the first thing that I did was I opened up the jump ring with both of the chain nose pliers, then I slipped it through the loop of this magnetic clasp, and then I added my chain, and it is a very, very small jump ring to work with, so and the clasp keeps sticking to my pliers. So I've got a firm hold on one end, and I'm just going to try to catch it with the other, and then I'm going to bring them closed just like you open and close a regular jump ring. There we go. And then we've got the catch chain hung to one side, and then we're just, all you got to do is add it to the other, and then you will have a completed cuff bracelet.